Just a moment. And that ought to do it. Hello and welcome to New Hampshire Peace Action's Peace and Justice Conversations series online. I'm Will Hopkins, Director of New Hampshire Peace Action. And in case you are new to us, our mission is to contribute to creating a world in which nuclear disarmament, mutual security, global understanding, international cooperation, and respect for human rights create social, economic, and environmental benefits for all. So 2020 has brought us a number of upheavals and things that we've needed to talk about, and so we decided to create this this bi-weekly online conversation series. It's intended to help us engage and sort through all of these changes that are happening and the changes that we'd like to see. Tonight is Homeless Remembrance Day in New Hampshire and nationwide. And we wanted to have someone to talk about housing issues that are facing people right now. And we are blessed and gifted again to have Martin Toe joining us, who is currently working with the Granite State Organizing Project on housing issues. Bit on just a heads up, we are live streaming, so if you don't want your face on the internet, feel free to turn off your video. Otherwise, we'd love to see your smiling faces. Do please stay on mute until we get to the Q&A time, when you're welcome to ask questions either by putting them in the chat and I will read them off, or you can raise your hand and I will recognize you and we will make sure your questions get asked. So Martin is a musician. He's the author of America Calls to Me, the story of a refugee boy's journey. He has worked with the American Friends Service Committee here in Concord, and he is a survivor of the Ivorian and Liberian Civil War. And he is a well-known organizer, musician, author. We're so glad to have you, Martin. Please take it away. Tell us about what you've been working on.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. So again, my name is Martin Till, and I am the Housing Justice Organizer with the Granite State Organizing Project and the Granite State Interfaith Action Fund. So really, I would like to welcome those who are here. Today, we're going to be hitting on the Jubilee project campaign, where we will be discussing what Jubilee is and why it's our best solution to our current housing insecurity. But before we do that, I want us to brush up on national and local trajectory of this housing crisis during this pandemic. And so, helping me to be able to do that, my colleague Sarah Jane will be co-presenting with me, and yeah, so there's two parts of this: the local and national, and as well as our proposal of a solution, which is the Jubilee, Housing Jubilee. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sarah Jane.
Okay. I'm assuming everyone can see the slide. Is that true?
They do, but it's not in the presentation mode. So actually, if you go to the right hand at the top, it says presentation. If you click at the right, if you click that.
Here we go.
Yeah, we're in action now.
Okay. All right. So as Martin said, I'm Sarah Jane Knoy. I'm the director of the Granite State Organizing Project, and just giving a little background on the housing situation in New Hampshire. First, before the pandemic hit, New Hampshire had a vacancy rate in many communities, particularly communities like Concord, Keene, Manchester, and Nashua, that was less than 0.5%. So that means that housing was already really, really tight. And then COVID hit, which meant that it was really important for people who were housed to stay housed. And it was doubly important to get people who were homeless off of the streets. So when the COVID first hit, New Hampshire, Governor Sununu did put a ban on evictions for renters and homeowners, that they could not be evicted for non-payment. And for homeowners, and landlords, it was a foreclosure ban. That expired June 2020. And then the eviction rate, which had been on hold, skyrocketed when that ban expired. Pretty quickly, the federal government realized that there was a problem, and the CDC put a ban on evictions in place. That ban is in place actually right now only until December 31st of 2020. The bill that they may be passing in Congress right now will extend the moratorium through January, if we're lucky. You might have heard that New Hampshire received a lot of money, 1.2 billion from the CARES Act for relief, and you might have heard that a lot of that was allocated towards housing. Initially, 35 million was allocated for housing issues. Eventually, 20 million was passed on to the community action agencies, the CAP agencies, and was allocated for a one-time relief paying mortgage or rent that had to be $2,500 or less. And it was only allowed to go to 1 month of expenses. It could be rent, mortgage, or utilities or gas to keep you in your home. The CAP agencies did a pretty bad job of getting that money out to the community. Of the 20 million, you can see as of December 10th, they had gotten about 3,000 households had received help for about $9 million worth. So that means there's another 10 or 11 million still in those funds. As of right now, those funds cannot be spent on housing, and they will go into the state unemployment fund. That could change depending on the bill that is in Congress tonight. And it could mean that that funding will still be available to help people with their housing, but that's unclear. We do know that many, many thousands of people applied for the money and never got it. We know that it probably at least 6,000 to 10,000 people applied, and 3,000 have gotten it. And as I said, the deadline was passed. It was Friday. If the bill now in Congress passes and is signed by the president, the state will have an extra year to spend this 10 million on housing, and the state will receive an additional 200 million for rent relief. But again, that is unknown at this time. So the eviction rates did go back down when the moratorium went back into place, but the eviction ban does not prevent interest fees, late fees, and it also, the CDC moratorium, unlike the former state ban on evictions, does not prevent landlords from filing their eviction papers, so that the minute the ban is over, those cases can go to court and people can be evicted within days. So our concerns have been improving the approval process for rent or mortgage assistance so that the money gets out the door much more quickly, and that the federal eviction moratorium is okay, but a state moratorium actually has more teeth and works better. So we would prefer a state moratorium over the federal moratorium. I will stop there and turn it over to Martin to introduce this video. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah Jane. So this next portion of the presentation is really real life stories from individuals that have been hit hard by the pandemic. And I want to just remind everyone, well, first I want to thank the people that that took their time to let us film them. They're not here, but their testimonies are something that we can listen to and hear and really see how we can try to come about with a solution. And again, I just wanted to say that this project was put together by GSOP and the Granite State Interfaith Action Fund. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's share the story of let's hear our storytellers.
It would be unfair and unjust to take any legal action against these people who, through no fault of their own, cannot pay their rent.
My name is Kate West. I live in Concord. So one of the things that happened, especially specifically pertaining to housing, was that where I was living before on North State Street, after the first announcement from Governor Sununu that was really mandating, the parks were closed and things like that, once things started to really shut down, our landlord put the building up for sale.
Well, I'm going to make that personal. Obviously, the fear of loss would be my inability to support my family. The way I support my family is by managing buildings in a cost-effective way. So that would be my greatest fear. Other losses to me are not as important because you can always recover from them.
When COVID-19 started, I had to use that money that I saved up for my business to pay for my rent.
See, I didn't apply, and neither did my significant other. We didn't apply for unemployment right away because at the time when COVID kind of first hit, she still had a steady job, and I was trying to transfer over to a better job. And it's ironic too, because I literally went through the whole interview process and everything. We were about to fill out the paperwork, everything was about to be fine. I got a call a few days later saying we can't because everything was starting to close down.
The new owner decided not to renew the lease where my daughter and I were living. It was difficult during a period where it's a pandemic, allowing people to come in to look at the property while I was still living there. Yeah, the immediate feeling of housing insecurity, knowing that by the end of the month I needed to be out of where I was staying, that I didn't have another place where I could move to. It's not up to you as the looker, it's up to the landlord as the person that rents to you to choose to rent to you.
We're in a situation where I cannot go to them and say, you really need to pay, because we all know that there's no money right now. So we have to figure out a way of how do we keep us all paying our bills and keeping tenants in their unit.
There's no business without people paying for their rent where they live, If you don't have money to pay for your rent, you're not gonna have money to go, say, buy food or, you have to sacrifice. You're gonna either buy the food or you're gonna pay for your rent.
I did end up finding this place because of a friend on Facebook who is now my landlord across the street. Because they reached out to do me a favor. I would say before I moved, it was very difficult for me to face the idea financially of having to pay first and last month's rent or a security deposit with such little learning that I was going to have to do that.
Because we didn't know how it worked, and I feel like that's a lot of young people who are on their own. We were looking on the news and everything. There was lines out the door, like 200, 300 to 1,000. The numbers just grew daily. So we didn't know if we were even gonna get paid. It was just a lot of stress and struggle, you know.
And I knew in that moment that if the person that bought the building was not that kind to me, or if I did not have friends that said, well, we bought the building across from us and we have an apartment we can rent to you, that I came very close to not having a place to live with my daughter.
People do have a right to housing because it's a health issue, it's a safety issue. So the question is, how do you maintain that right? So I do see it as a right and a duty within the common good to provide housing. It's simply a question of how do you administer that on each individual level.
My name is Kate and I support the Jubilee Project.
I am Bienvenue and I support the Jubilee Project.
My name is Dante, and I support the Jubilee Project.
My name is Paul DiUlio, property manager of Durfield Property Management, and I would support the Jubilee Project to help those who need help the most.
All right. So, sweet, awesome. So yeah, just
Oops, sorry, let me just stop this.
happens.
All right, now we don't want this. Okay, sorry, got to get back to the slideshow. Okay.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So yeah, those people that you saw in the video are all local, locally based individuals that during the pandemic have been experiencing the effect of it. And I want to say that of the many people that I've spoken to, they are just simply a small fraction of the many people that are hurting here in New Hampshire. And it's very important that one, we do recognize that this is such a big problem, and to really come together to think about ways that we can help address and bring about solutions. So the Housing Jubilee, after this part of the presentation, there's two things I want you to take away. What is a Housing Jubilee? What is Jubilee? What is Jubilee? Why and why is it the solution to our current crisis today, housing crisis? So what is Jubilee? Well, in accordance to tradition, faith traditions, it's really a roughly around 50 years cycle, which ends with prisoners being freed, and those who own debts having their debts forgiven during that time. And in accordance to the Jubilee year of Leviticus 25, The, which is based off the Hebrews and Babylonian practice, which has lasted for well over 2,000 years, and even after the Hebrew people came out of captivity, they continued the practice of debt forgiveness. So what would happen is when a new leader would assume the throne, one of the things that he would do is actually he would liberate the people from their bondage, which means those who are bond servants, those who own small land, or even those who lands were seized by him, or those lands that were seized. So this practice of Jubilee has been something that's been practiced throughout the kingdom of Mesopotamia, Eastern kingdoms, and even the Persian kingdoms as well. So what is a housing jubilee? It depends who you're asking, but in most situations, the answer is the same. For those who are renters and landlords and homeowners, it is simply the forgiveness of housing debt. And you may ask yourself, why exactly do we need a debt cancellation? And well, then the answer to that is you need a debt cancellation when the ability to pay back the debt goes beyond your means, and you aren't able to do that. So right now here in New Hampshire, we have a lot of individuals who have lost their jobs, have their stores have been closed down, and people who hours have been cut, whether they're working retail or restaurant jobs, and they're not able to make the money, or the wages is not meeting their ability to be able to pay for those essential things that they need. And so what happens? You have landlords now in debt, and the only things left is foreclosure on their properties. So that leaves us to do two things, whether it's kicking people out of their house, and not having, kicking people out of their house and leaving them homeless, and having to fend for themselves at home, in whether to get shelter, and other means. So that is why, so Housing Jubilee here in New Hampshire, Granite State Organizing Project and Granite State Interfaith Action Fund issued a call for a national Housing Jubilee, which is a widespread forgiveness of housing debt. At the beginning of the year, the eviction that was filed by landlord rate climbed up exponentially right after Governor Sununu ban was lifted. And one of the things that is a miss with the moratorium is that there's no funds to back it up, which leaves our landlords and tenants and people, local citizens within our community in a financial jeopardy. So to make it plain and simple, the eviction moratorium and the partial relief fund that's been made available is not really enough, and it can't cover it's not truly the solution that we need. And what we really need is a housing jubilee. And so one of the means that we are able to really raise up our voice as individual, to fight for a solution, is by taking action. As you may know, the governor recently started a council on housing stability to think to think about how to solve our housing crisis and homelessness issue. In addition of them thinking about the long-term housing issues here in New Hampshire, the Governor Council Housing Commission thought it was important to talk to the governor about the possibility of renewing the eviction ban. And conversation of that only started because here at GSOP, I worked on a phone of action where we sent over 1,200 emails to those board members, and so because of that, they took action. That stirred up a conversation among them where they put a small team together to go to the governor to talk about the possibility of renewing the eviction ban. So the same opportunity is now available to you. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to drop in the chat box a petition that will go directly to your elected official, as well as our governor, and just send them a message. Let them know that we need a jubilee, that we want him to do specific things here in New Hampshire. We need a renewal of the moratorium, and then also for forgiveness of debts later, because if that's not something that he can do now, but we need debts forgiven. We know the funds are there and available. So the action is in the chat box. If you can go to chat, please go ahead and take action and send that email to your elected officials. Send it to Governor Sununu. So that way we can, one, prevent homelessness, and two, make sure that people aren't at the end of the month left with the inability to be able to pay back to pay their rent. So that's all I have for you. And yes, and the inability to, yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So thank you. The first question, which Sarah Jane has answered in the chat already, was from David. And David asks, does Jubilee apply to bank foreclosures as well as landlord evictions? And Sarah Jane said, yes, covers foreclosures. Was there anything to add about the concept? Just that if you're in housing debt, the federal government cuts a check for the amount to take you out of it? Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So, and the reason is this, right? In order to have a society where your economy is healthy, you can't have people in a massive amount of debt. So that's it.
Mhm.
So go ahead, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, it is, of course, in this context, it is COVID related. So the people do have to show that they lost income or lost jobs or had to stay home and take care of someone because of COVID. But I just, I recently learned, maybe when you think about it, you think, oh, they're a month or two behind, right? And that shouldn't be such a big deal. I recently learned that there are so many people who are literally 6 to 9 months behind. And that is something that you just can't pay back. Even if you get called back to your job, and even if you get a raise to $15 an hour, you're never going to be able to get that back. So, yeah.
So before I know once people get warmed up, usually questions start flowing. So while I have no questions in the chat, I want to ask a few of my own. And the first one that's on my mind is, has this been done in a modern economy anytime in the recent past. Has anybody tried this recently, and what were the results?
So one of the things that I want to also point out too is that this is an open discussion where if there's things that stood out to you about the stories that you heard, perhaps you may know someone that also have been going through the pandemic and have either their landlords may have sold the house that they were living in, and they had to find a place to live. I want this to be an open discussion where people feel free to share stories in similar contexts, because I know that that's what one of the things that we're here for is that we all want to find a solution to this problem, to this crisis. And the only way we know that we're really are all on the same plane is that through the stories that we share with each other.
I'm not aware of anyone doing Jubilee in the modern history. Martin, are you?
Not right now
Okay.
in particular.
There is the
But we
concept is in a bill that's introduced into Congress by Representative Omar.
Cool. So Sarah and Jennifer Smith say, what is being done to communicate better with people so they know about this opportunity? Often people are not aware of opportunities or need help applying. So I just want to clarify, I don't think this is being done. There's a bill introduced to do it. So the opportunity right now is to call and push our legislators to see it happen. So that may be a clarification point, unless Sarah and Jennifer, is there more to that question there?
This is Sarah. I was just I had read that there were a lot of people who didn't, in the previous kinds of situation where they were supposed to apply for these funds, they just weren't aware of it, didn't know how to do it, and oftentimes were afraid of having an eviction on their record, so they would quickly just leave, even though they had there were other alternatives, just to make sure they didn't have an eviction on their record. So yeah, I don't, that thought I just wondered if their thought had gone into how to manage something like this. I know you haven't actually started the process for this, but even the stuff that's available currently is not being utilized well, or wasn't.
We have a proposal that the money that is available for the housing, for the one-time assistance that is now done, but if it gets renewed, we think it should go to other agencies beyond just the community action agencies, that there are more grassroots organizations that would be better at getting the money out the door, because we had to, Martin and Aaron had to personally help several people sort of figure out how to call and how to get their paperwork in order. So it was definitely overly complicated. So if I could go from there right into how landlords we kept afloat, I think that the landlords are the ones who get the money. It's not the tenants, it's the landlords that get the money. And we need landlords desperately. That's been proven by this high vacancy rate, by the low vacancy rate, by the number of homeless people, the people who can't find places to live, by the number of buildings that have been torn down or been made into high-end housing. So we are about to launch a phone to action just for landlords so that they can call the governor and ask the governor to make these funds available. Do you want to add to that, Martin? I know you've worked with the landlords a lot.
Yes. And the landlords, one of the thing that they don't want to lose is their home, and they're running a business as well. So, um, having a moratorium, a foreclosure moratorium in place helps ensure them that they won't be losing their home, and that also ensures that the people who are renting from them will be able to stay in their home, to be able to stay without having to uh, it's like an insurance that their business are going to be going, it's going to continue to go as well, at least not lose it to their banks. um one of the other things that that I think is just very important for us right now, um, is making sure that that communication between um, uh, tenants and tenants and landlords is really there. And um, but during these times, when the banks are when the banks are coming at you, and the tenants aren't able to pay their rent, because they lost their jobs, or they were sick, and they weren't able to pay for that for month or 2 months rent. Um, we we uh we we're at we're we're, we're petitioning that that our governor step up and do the things that he knows that is right, which is making sure that people are housed, and making sure that people later on don't have to be kicked out of their homes or lose their homes.
All right. Got another question from David Blair. He says, it was so important to hear from the landlord in the film. How is Jubilee working with landlord associations and banks? For instance, would it be useful to make an appointment with a bank officer at the places where we do business and urge them to advocate for Jubilee?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is very important that banks also advocate for Jubilee, because, like I said, when a community is healthy, um, and the people who live in the community aren't forced to move out or forced to give up their homes, um, you have everyone's happy. Uh,
So I saw
so,
in the
Sarah Jane, do you want to add
presentation.
to that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah Jane.
No,
Okay. I saw in the presentation that Governor Sununu essentially has about 10 million right now set aside for housing that has been that is undistributed. So that's COVID relief funds that were sent that are still there. Is that enough to cover all of the Jubilee debt or all of the current housing debt in New Hampshire, or is that no? I'm seeing shaking heads there. Okay,
it's barely a drop in the bucket.
Mhm.
But the new bill that they're considering this evening would send, I think I have a fact sheet. Martin, you have the fact sheet too. I think it would send 200 million to
Yep, 200
this
million.
New Hampshire for housing. Because there's estimates that were done by 3 different think tanks about how many people are in danger of losing their housing due to COVID. And the conservative range in New Hampshire was 17,000 families. And the less conservative range done by the another economics firm was 32,000 families. So if you think about 32,000 times an average housing cost of 1,000 to 2,000 a month times, 6 to 9 months of unemployment, or even just 3 months of back rent owed or back mortgage, you see how large the number is.
Yeah, we're getting
And
into
to-
the range that we're spending upgrading nuclear weapons, that kind of big money, which is part of why Peace Action is interested in things like housing, is because we know where all that money is going, where the funds that could be distributed there. could make those kinds of differences.
And it's important to note too that in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic that over 4,000 people applied, and of those 4,000 people that applied, many of them did not get approved. So in the span of those months that led up to in this moment, only 3,000 plus have been accepted into the program. So it begs to ask the question that so how many people are applying on a monthly basis, and why aren't those numbers made available? Why is it so stringent to be able to access the help that you need in this moment? And pertaining to housing and pertaining specifically related to COVID. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and we want answers for. So yeah.
Do we know why the governor has held about half of the housing money he has? And do we think that there are ways we can pressure him to make those funds available to the most needy among us?
My understanding is that the CAP agencies haven't gotten the money out, like Martin just said. They're the ones who turn people down, not the governor. And at one point, the governor stepped in and asked them to simplify their application process. And that did then get another chunk of the funding approved. But this one, we can't blame on the governor. We have to blame on the agencies.
And CAP agencies that's community assistance program, is that?
Community action agencies, there's like 6 in the state. It's Southern New Hampshire Services, it's Southwest Community Action, it's Belknap Community Action, Grafton County.
So L.R. Berger asks, what's your understanding about why the CAP agencies are holding back funds?
The people that I've talked to have told me things like, I had one of the high school students I used to work with who's now a young college graduate trying to make it on her own, one of the former YOU members. She said, well, I called Southern New Hampshire Services and told them I was in trouble and I needed help to pay my rent. And they told me, well, it's going to take at least 2 months. So she said, I just gave up. So I feel like it's just this like culture of lack of respect for the poor. I don't know. Martin, what do you think? You've talked to people who tried to get the money.
Yes. And some of the stories that I heard is that that people they required so many proofs of all this paperwork in order to go through their vetting system, and some people just are they aren't used to that to doing that. And so like some just because they're not able to upfront bring all of the requirements that they need are rejected, and will not be able to get the money unless they get someone who is like an alderman to speak on behalf of them in order to get access to those funds. That's one of the things that we've been seeing, that people who have been getting rejected, whenever the aldermen would call, the funds would be released.
So LR followed up on that question by saying, I'm wondering if any journalists have reported about the bottleneck in CAP agencies. Have we seen any statewide media or local media talking about the reality that half of the funds that were intended to deal with the housing crisis that we're experiencing are stuck and not flowing to the people who need them?
It was a couple months ago in the Union Leader, which is then what prompted the governor to step in and say, you guys need to streamline your application process. So, but then since then, as Martin implied, we have not been able to get the numbers released on how many applications there were. So as Martin said in the first, what was it, Martin? 2 weeks?
The first 2 weeks, yep.
4,000 people applied and less than 1,000 got the money. Now, since then, we know that 3,000 have gotten the money, but they will not release the numbers of how many people have applied. And several agencies, including New Hampshire Legal Assistance, have been trying to get that number. So you're right, it's a good idea for a journalist, yeah.
Are there any national estimates of what housing debt is expected to be as we get a vaccine and see kind of a re-entry into whatever our economy is about to become after we're able to come together again? Do we know what the national figures are for amounts of current housing debt?
Well, the new bill in Congress tonight has 25 billion for emergency rental assistance in it. Which I guess you're used to big numbers because you referred to the nuclear program. I am not used to numbers like 25 billion.
Yeah.
And that.
It's just a drop in the bucket for the nuclear program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 200 million to New Hampshire. That's a significant amount of money.
I think Jennifer said it right there. To say that New Hampshire is getting 200 million should let you know that what's on the horizon that's coming our way.
All right. Are there more questions? I think I'm about out. So.
Well, I have a question. Go ahead, Jen.
So Will, I just typed this in the chat. I wonder if the CAP agencies actually were and still are under-resourced to take this on, and whether that's really the problem, not that they don't care, but they just don't know how to do it. And that there ought to be a better mechanism sought out as we get more funds than burdening CAP agencies without giving them additional trained staff who know how to do this kind of thing.
If neither of you had anything to add, John, did you have something you wanted to put in?
Yeah, I'll throw in a few remarks, and I do have a question about the pending congressional bill. Suppose it doesn't pass. We've seen how Congress has behaved lately. What happens then?
Then
looks like all hell breaks loose.
That's exactly it. Exactly it.
Now, regarding journalism, has anybody in the Granite State Organizing Project or the Interfaith Alliance contacted New Hampshire Public Radio to get this story reported?
I think right now they have published a few articles around the matter, but not directly, not with this new information. So I think that's something that we are going to look into.
Yeah, because people listen to NHPR, and I think it would be a good idea to prod them if we could do that. By way of comparison, what Jennifer said about a drop in the bucket. Got it.
You got muted there, John.
That drop in the bucket after the $25 billion housing bill, housing appropriation was mentioned, was, I think, right on the mark. So a couple of comparisons. Lockheed Martin alone gets $45 billion in federal funds to build weapons. Nuclear weapons modernization is another $45 billion. By comparison, the entire budget of the National Institute of Health is $41.7 billion. So that tells you where our present priorities lie right now.
Thanks, John. All right. Well, I want to. Oh, I think we have another.
I did just put in the chat a link to the fact sheet on this current bill if you want a whole bunch of information.
So David's got a comment in there that you read. It's not a question, so I'm not going to forward it on. I think I'm going to draw it to a close because I think our questions have drawn to a trickle. I want to say thank you to Sarah Jane and Martin. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the on National Homeless Memorial Day. It was really important to us that we talk to some people who are working in housing and working for housing justice. And I so appreciate your time and your preparation. Answer to the question, is this video available to us? Absolutely. It's available on New Hampshire Peace Action's YouTube channel or our Facebook channel. So you can search NH Peace Action on YouTube and you will find a video of this. It's also available on our website under the live tab. It won't go up until tomorrow, but you can scroll down and all of our conversations are on the New Hampshire Peace Action website as you scroll down under the live tab. So before we cut out for the evening, I did want to give you a heads up about the next few of these conversation series. Next 2 weeks from today, January 4th, I will be talking about what New Hampshire Peace Action's top priorities are for 2021, and Janet Zeller will be hosting. I'm going to have a chance to geek out a little bit about foreign policy, which is something I'm passionate about, and talk about our core issues and the work that we expect to be doing under the Biden administration. 2 weeks after that will be Martin Luther King Day, and we will be hosting Jason Wells and Deborah Opramala, who will talk about the Poor People's Campaign and King's legacy today. After that, February 1st, Griffin Sinclair Wingate, Why Work with Youth. And then February 15th will be Eric Chaffetz. He's a professor at, I believe it's Cornell, and he's going to talk about the impact of American exceptionalism on our culture and policy. So thank you again, Sarah Jane and Martin. So appreciate your time and sharing tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Will. Best wishes to everybody for the holidays and the year beyond.